two continents practically touching on the map. Just 120 miles separating Africa from Asia. You can drive 3,000 miles from the east coast to the west coast of the United States without major problems, right? But crossing this small distance between neighboring continents? Completely impossible. There are 5 brutal barriers that transform this short distance into the most impractical journey on the planet. And the first one was created by humanity itself. Look at the map. Africa and Asia are practically touching, right? On paper, it seems like you could drive across in a relaxed weekend. But the truth is that this proximity is a cruel illusion, one of those that deceives even the most experienced. The physical distance between Egypt and Asia, a ridiculous 200 kilometers. The distance between the problems preventing you from crossing, well, that one is infinite, my friend. Reality hides something that maps will never show you. There are 5 gigantic layers of obstacles between you and this crossing, each one more complex than the last. It's as if the universe had conspired to keep these two continents separated, you know? We're not talking about a simple logistical challenge here, but a brutal combination of geography, politics, history, and nature itself in its most hostile mode. You know what's most impressive? The first obstacle wasn't even created by nature. It wasn't a mountain that appeared out of nowhere, nor a desert that was always there. It was humanity itself that decided, at a specific moment in history, to cut this connection permanently. It seems crazy, but it makes perfect sense when you understand the context behind it. Imagine trying to plan this trip today. You'd open GPS, trace the shortest possible route, and nothing. There simply is no path. And what's most curious is that this impossibility begins with a line that humanity drew in the water over 150 years ago. An artificial scar that changed the entire world, and that, to this day, keeps Africa and Asia as neighbors who never visit each other. In 1869, humanity took a giant water saw and cut Africa from Asia once and for all. The Suez Canal wasn't just an impressive engineering work. It was the moment we decided that global trade was more important than the physical connection between continents. And it worked, you see. Today, about 12% of all world trade passes through that narrow strip of water, moving trillions of dollars every year. But here's the problem nobody tells you about. The Suez Canal isn't a calm river. You cross by ferry as if you were crossing the Mississippi. It's a militarized zone, controlled, watched 24 hours a day with the same intensity as a border in conflict. There's even a bridge there, the famous Mubarak Peace Bridge, which technically connects both sides. But it's practically decorative, you understand? It's like having a door locked with 10 padlocks and someone giving you the key to just one. Think with me, even if you've got every imaginable legal authorization, even if you had powerful political connections, even if you paid fortunes in fees and bribes, you'd still only be at the beginning. Crossing the canal would be the easy part of the story, the entrance to the labyrinth. On the other side, something much worse awaits you. Much more complex and infinitely more dangerous. The irony is cruel. That water that facilitated world trade also created the most efficient barrier between two continents that should be united. And when you finally set foot on the other side of the canal, when you think the worst is over, that's when you realize the nightmare is just beginning. 'Cause ahead of you stretches one of the most unstable and dangerous territories on the entire planet. The Sinai Peninsula is what happens when geography and politics have a troubled child. Technically, it belongs to Egypt, but in practice, it's a ghost territory stuck between worlds. It's not totally Africa. It will never be completely Asia. The scars of decades of conflict have transformed every square kilometer into a living reminder of wars that never really ended. 3 massive wars happened there, and today, insurgencies still sprout like weeds in the desert. Imagine driving on a road where every 50 kilometers you encounter a military checkpoint, armed soldiers stopping you, searching, questioning. In some stretches, you can't even continue alone. You need mandatory military escort. It's like trying to cross a minefield. Because, well, there are literally still mines buried in various areas from the old conflicts. The most disturbing part, even the local residents, people who were born and raised there, face severe movement restrictions. Bedouins who lived on those lands for generations need special permits to circulate in certain zones. If even those who call that place home can't move freely, what's left for a foreigner wanting to drive through? The Sinai Peninsula should be just the beginning of your transcontinental journey, but it already seems like the final boss of an impossible game. And look, if you think overcoming this hostile territory would be your greatest achievement, I need to tell you something. The next 500 kilometers turn all of this into a warm-up. Because ahead awaits you a geopolitical chess game where each border is a potential wrong move. Let's do an imagination exercise here. You managed to cross the Suez Canal, survive the Sinai Peninsula, and now you need to trace a hypothetical route to continue toward Asia. Take the map, start drawing possible paths, and each option is a dead end. Gaza, total blockade, permanent conflict zone. Israel and Lebanon, technically in a state of war, border closed for common civilian transit. Try going further north then. Syria. The country has been in civil war for over a decade, with territories controlled by different factions that don't even recognize each other's authority. Iraq. Active conflict zones, militias, instability that changes from week to week. It's like those board games where each space has a different trap, except here the consequences are very real. You know what's most frustrating about all this? In Europe, you cross 10 countries without even showing your passport. Borders are imaginary lines on the asphalt. Here in the Middle East borders, you can be stopped between two military posts in the same country, literally 50 kilometers apart from each other. Each border is a universe of bureaucracy, suspicion, and hostility accumulated over decades. But let's say, just for a second, that you're a diplomat with connections in all these governments, that you manage, by some political miracle, all the visas, all the authorizations, all the necessary escorts. You'd think you'd finally have a clear path, right? Wrong. Because while humans fight over lines on the map, nature prepared its own barriers. And the first of them is an ocean that doesn't have a drop of water. The Rubalakali has a nickname that says it all. Empty quarter desert. The empty quarter. But empty doesn't mean harmless, quite the contrary. This desert is bigger than France itself, a brutal expanse of sand that functions as a silent killer. Temperatures that easily exceed 122 degrees Fahrenheit make the asphalt literally melt under your feet, transforming any road into a liquid memory of what was once infrastructure. The dunes there aren't those fluffy sandhills you see in romantic photos. We're talking about monsters up to 980 feet high that move with the wind like living creatures. They swallow entire roads overnight. Bury signs, erase any trace of civilization. It's like trying to build a house on top of an ocean, only in slow motion and with sand instead of water. The cost of keeping roads functioning in this region is astronomical. It's not build once and done. It's constantly rebuilding. Every week, every month. Even the Saudis, swimming in petrodollars, have absurd difficulty maintaining consistent routes through the empty quarter. They give up on certain stretches because it's simply not worth fighting against nature on this scale. Can you imagine crossing hundreds of miles of this, with the sun melting your skin, sand invading every part of your vehicle, mirages deceiving you at every turn? And when you finally emerge from this hellish frying pan, when you think the worst of the heat is over, that's when you realize something disturbing. Ahead, on the horizon, silhouettes emerge that make the desert seem like a pleasant walk, the natural walls that Earth raised millions of years ago. If the desert is the frying pan, the mountain ranges are the hammer that completes the trap. Zagros, Taurus, Caucasus. These names sound exotic, but they represent colossal barriers of rock and ice that cut off any viable land route. We're not just talking about intimidating height. but entire mountain systems that extend for thousands of miles, one after another, without giving respite. The problem isn't just going up and down. Its regions are geologically unstable, with constant earthquakes that destroy bridges, tear up roads, transform mountain passes into death traps. Avalanches and landslides happen with frightening frequency, closing routes for weeks or months. Some passes simply don't exist during half the year, buried under meters of snow and ice that no equipment can clear in time. Crossing the Alps in Europe is already considered quite a challenge for road engineers. Now multiply that by several Alps in a row, in countries that don't have cooperation agreements with each other. Without shared budget for maintenance, without political interest in facilitating passage, each country takes care of its part of the mountain. And if the neighbor lets everything collapse on the other side, that's their problem. The cruel irony is that these mountains have existed for millions of years, long before humans drew borders or invented cars. They are silent witnesses to a simple fact. Nature never wanted this transcontinental highway to exist. But you know what makes all this even more impossible? It's not just the physical geography blocking you. It's the invisible weight of centuries of human history, transforming each piece of land into disputed territory. Roads should connect peoples, unite cultures, facilitate mutual understanding. But here, each border in the Middle East borders tells a different story. They are scars from conflicts, walls erected by distrust, lines drawn by colonizers who never understood the region. The past didn't stay in the past. It lives and breathes in every checkpoint, in every denied visa, in every suspicious look from a soldier. European colonialism drew borders with a ruler and ignorance, dividing tribes, separating families, creating artificial nations that never asked to exist that way. Then came the wars, one after another, stacking rancor upon resentment. Each decade brought new conflicts, new reasons to lock the doors and throw away the key. The result: a mosaic of countries that don't trust each other. Europe removed its borders through integration, created the European Union, facilitated the movement of millions. Here, the absolute opposite happened. Borders were fortified, militarized, transformed into declarations of permanent Cold War. It's as if each country said, "Stay on your side and I'll stay on mine," and any attempt to cross is seen as invasion, not as tourism. It's not just that you can't physically cross these borders, it's that nobody wants you to cross. You understand? Each government has its reasons, its fears, its memories of when letting someone pass cost too much. And when you put it all together, the hostile geography, the fragmented politics, and the bloody history, an inevitable question arises. How much would it cost, after all, to try to build this impossible road? Let's talk about money, because that's where dreams really die. A cargo ship crosses the Suez Canal carrying 20,000 containers in a week, spending a fraction of what it would cost to transport the same cargo by land. A plane leaves Cairo and lands in Riyadh in 4 hours. Simple as that. Now imagine a hypothetical land road. Months of travel, billions in construction and maintenance costs, very high risks at every kilometer. The Trans-African Highway has existed on paper for over 50 years. 50 years planning, designing, promising to connect the entire continent. And you know how many stretches are actually complete and working well? It's a ridiculous fraction of the original project. Because in the real world, between the beautiful plan and execution, there's an abyss called budget, political will, and return on investment. Here's the dirty secret nobody openly admits. No country wants to pay the bill alone for a road that will serve its neighbors more than itself. Egypt builds its part, but what about Syria and Iraq? Each nation waits for the other to start, for the other to invest first. It's a pushing game that has lasted decades and has no forecast of ending. Private companies won't touch the project because there's no guaranteed profit. Governments don't invest because there are more urgent priorities. International organizations try to stitch together agreements that fall apart at the first meeting. And meanwhile, ships continue crossing oceans. Planes continue cutting through the sky because these routes already work perfectly. But wait, because there's something curious in all this. Africa and Asia are already connected, just in ways you can't see looking at a common map. Here's the twist that changes everything. Africa and Asia are already intimately connected. You just don't see it on the map because the connection happens underwater and in the air. Submarine fiber optic cables cross the ocean floor carrying terabytes of data per second, connecting continents more efficiently than any road ever could. Your video call between Cairo and Mumbai travels faster than any car. Oil and gas pipelines cut through borders that humans cannot cross. Oil flows from the Persian Gulf to refineries in Africa without asking for a visa, without stopping at checkpoints, without worrying about insurgencies. The energy that powers entire cities travels through buried pipes while people are stuck at airports waiting for authorizations. It's almost poetic, in a sad way. The maritime routes that connect Africa to Asia are ultra-efficient, optimized over decades. Giant ships make the journey constantly, transporting everything from electronics to food, creating an invisible web of trade that works perfectly without needing a single kilometer of asphalt. Modern connectivity doesn't need you to drive from one continent to another. It has already found better paths. But even knowing all this, even understanding that the connection already exists in other forms, that stubborn question still remains in your head. What if it were possible? What if someone, for some crazy reason, actually built this impossible road? What would it be like to drive from Cape Town to Beijing, crossing two continents on an epic journey that defies everything we've talked about so far? Imagine the scene: Cape Town to Beijing. An absurd distance of more than 12,000 miles of asphalt connecting the extreme south of Africa to the heart of Asia. You would cross more than 15 countries, each with its own laws, languages, currencies, and varying levels of hostility. 3 different deserts would try to swallow you alive. 5 mountain ranges would test the limits of modern engineering. It would be the literal definition of impossible journey. Now comes the hard part. Even if this road were built tomorrow, with cutting-edge technology and unlimited budget, it would have a ridiculously short lifespan. The first regional war would close entire sections for years. Sandstorms in the empty quarter would destroy kilometers of pavement in a matter of days. Earthquakes in mountainous zones would transform bridges into rubble. Maintenance would be an eternal and absurdly expensive nightmare. And the checkpoints. Imagine stopping every 60 miles to show documents, answer questions, be searched, sometimes waiting hours or days for authorizations that may or may not come. Your epic journey would transform into a bureaucratic marathon where the destination seems increasingly distant. Not to mention the real risk to your safety in various sections where not even military escorts guarantee total protection. The final irony is cruel and perfect. It would be the most epic road ever built by humanity, and probably the emptiest in the world. Very few people would have a legitimate reason to travel it. Even fewer would have the courage or resources. It would be a monument to human stubbornness, an asphalt scar cutting through regions that never asked to be united in this way. But there's a detail that makes everything worse. The future isn't making this journey more viable. It's doing exactly the opposite. Climate change isn't just altering the planet, it's making this journey increasingly impractical. The empty quarter desert is expanding, swallowing lands that were once marginally habitable. Deserts grow like living organisms, advancing over what remains of vegetation and transforming more regions into uninhabitable zones. And with them come sandstorms, increasingly frequent and violent. These storms aren't just inconveniences. They are catastrophic events that can bury entire vehicles, tear out signs, make roads completely invisible. What used to happen a few times a year now occurs monthly in certain regions. Keeping any infrastructure functioning in these conditions is like trying to hold water with your hands. It's impossible and frustrating. In the mountains, glacier melting is creating unprecedented geological instability. Ice that held rock formations for millennia is disappearing, causing massive landslides and changing the very geography of the passes. What was dangerous in 1990 became suicidal in 2025. Engineers who designed mountain roads decades ago didn't imagine that the ground would literally change under their projects. And here's the most frightening fact. The cost of maintaining roads in desert regions has increased more than 300% in the last 20 years. It's not normal inflation. It's nature charging an increasingly higher price for each kilometer of asphalt we dare to place where it doesn't want it. The 21st century is sealing once and for all the impossibility of this transcontinental highway. But while nature closes doors, technology has opened completely different windows. There is an Africa to Asia highway that works perfectly at this exact moment, transporting more information in 1 second than 1,000 trucks could in a month. The 2 Africa submarine cable is approximately 28,000 miles long, connecting 3 continents in a fiber optic web that completely ignores political borders, hostile deserts, and impassable mountains. It's the infrastructure of the 21st century solving problems from the 19th century. Regional energy infrastructure also works surprisingly well where cooperation is possible. Electricity crosses borders through transmission lines. Natural gas flows through buried pipes, creating economic interdependence that no road could generate. Countries that barely speak to each other diplomatically still exchange energy because it makes financial sense for both sides. Humanity has already solved the problem of connection between continents, just with contemporary technology instead of antiquated solutions. Data travels at the speed of light. Goods cross oceans in increasingly larger and more efficient ships. Planes shorten distances that would take weeks by land. We don't need an impossible road when we've already found infinitely better paths. Sometimes the answer isn't to force the construction of something that geography, politics, and economics conspire to prevent. It's to recognize that we've evolved beyond the need to connect everything with asphalt and yellow paint in the middle. The true connection between Africa to Asia already exists, constantly pulsing. It just doesn't have tolls or road signs. And maybe that's exactly how it should be, because when you put together all the pieces of this impossible story, you realize something crystal clear about the relationship between these 2 continents. 5 brutal barriers between you and an impossible journey, an artificial one that humanity dug, a political one woven by centuries of conflict, a desert one that melts asphalt and swallows roads, a mountainous one that Earth itself raised as a wall, and an economic one that kills any project before it even begins. Each one alone would be enough to make the journey unfeasible. Together, they create an absolute impossibility. On the map, Africa and Asia practically touch, separated by just a few kilometers of water. In reality, they are distant by centuries of history, kilometers of impossibility, and layers of complexity that no modern engineering can solve. The Suez Canal cut more than land. It cut any chance of driving between continents that should be united. And you? Do you know any other impossible journey on the planet? Any place where the map shamelessly lies about how close or far things really are? Leave your answer in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue discovering the fascinating contradictions of world geography that maps will never tell you.